Hello, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this evening or whatever time of day it is, wherever you are. Your Space Cowboy Books Online. I am your host, Jean-Paul Garnier, and today we are here to celebrate speculative poetry and the release of Eccentric Orbits Volume 4 from Dimension Fold Press, edited by Wendy Van Camp. And I'm going to hand it over to Wendy to tell you a little bit about this book.
Oh, well, thank you, Jean-Paul, and thank you again for hosting our anthology's launch party. It's always appreciated. um, Anytime I can get someone to do tech for me, I'm overjoyed. Anyway, my name is Wendy Van Camp. I am the Poet Laureate for the city of Anaheim, California. I'm also the editor of Eccentric Orbits 4. This is the third issue that I've been the editor of, and the series has just been going strong. I'm looking forward to doing another one next year, which will be Eccentric Orbits 5. I think this issue has to be the most diverse that we've had. We've had poets from every continent on the planet, from Africa to Australia, India, Europe, and of course here in America and Canada, and even South America, believe it or not. I've just been astonished at how far flung our little anthology is. At least it's little to me, my little baby. How far it's gone. Tonight is our second reading, and we had our European poets read earlier in our time just because it was more convenient for them, because otherwise it'd be like 3 a.m. for them at this time. But we have our more American orientated poets here, although I think Gerri is coming in from, is it Singapore, Gerri? Anyway.
Virginia.
Oh, you're here in the US too. Okay, never mind. But anyway, Eccentric Orbits is an anthology of speculative poetry or science fiction poetry. And even though it's all of one genre, it can be of any form. We have short haiku, haiku style, all the way up to epic poems that take up several pages. And of course, we have many Riesling nominees in our midst, and we're always glad to have them here. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and have all the poets read from their selections in the anthology. And we're going to go in the order of the flyer that was put out to advertise the reading. However, our first person on the list, Dale Chapman, is not here yet, and hopefully if she does pop in, she'll let us know. So we're going to start with Gerri Leen. Gerri, could you unmic yourself, introduce yourself, and then read your selection?
Certainly. My name's Gerri Leen. I live in Northern Virginia. I'm originally from the Seattle area, so I kind of feel ties to both the Pacific Northwest and the Mid-Atlantic. This is my second time in Eccentric Orbits, and I love this anthology, so thank you again for accepting my work. What I'd like to read tonight is a terzinal. I've come to form poetry pretty late. I came to writing pretty late to begin with, but form poetry especially. So this was a little bit of an adventure. It's called A Slice of Light, and here goes. You're tired of this artificial light. A lava tube is by its nature dark. My window art can set you all to right. They made these quarters comfortable but stark. You miss the light that slipped between your blinds. A lava tube is by its nature dark. My windows come with lights of many kinds, golden noon or late night silver blue. You miss the light that peers between your blinds. They are not cheap, that is so very true. How much then is a taste of home's true worth? Golden noon or late night silver blue. Who knows how long you'll be away from earth? How sad to miss the simple joy of day. How much then is a taste of home's true worth? I'll recreate your favorite place to stay. You're tired of this artificial light. How sad to miss the simple joy of day. My window art can set you all to right. So,
very lovely.
Thank you.
Oh, did you want to add something, Gerri? I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no. I think that's good.
Okay, great. Thank you for your reading.
Thank you.
Next is RK Rugg. And Raymond, if you could turn on your mic rather. Go ahead and introduce yourself and read your selection.
All right. And whoops. Hello.
We hear you.
I turned my video off somehow, but I will, let's see.
We do see you, so why don't
You see me? Okay. All right, I'll just go ahead then. So good evening. My name's RK Rugg. I too am from the Pacific Northwest and now out on in the East. I'm from Northwest Montana, and I now teach middle school writing in Massachusetts in a mill town, and write speculative poetry. This is my third appearance in Eccentric Orbits, and this evening I'll be reading Other Lights Than Yours, which is a poem that was very much influenced by an academic paper that was written by Rebecca Brackman called, the paper was Dwarves Are Not Your Heroes, Anti-Semitism and the Dwarves in J.R.R. Tolkien's Writing. So, Other Lights Than Yours. But don't the dwarfs miss the light of the sun, they ask among themselves, but loud enough for us to overhear. Perfect elven eyebrows arched in faux sympathy. Really, it's their children I feel most sorry for. How sad it is that they have to grow up in the darkness. They are annoyed by our clothing, our beards, our names. Our obsession with gold and precious stones offends their sensibilities. Mockery with an undertone of ill-concealed envy. They are jealous of our skills, but choose to forget that mining and metalwork were the only crafts allowed to the dwarfs for most of recent history. We became masters of the only trade we were permitted, and we will never be forgiven that sin. Holding on to our beliefs, our language, our traditions, makes us a stiff-necked race, clannish, standoffish, tribal, a lesser people, a people to be tolerated, but not trusted. So say the elves, and wonder why we choose to remain apart after all this time. But the elves can keep the light of their sun and are welcome to it. For our part, we will continue to keep our calendar aligned with the moon and to keep our traditions alive by candlelight. The week we mark with fire and light. Our departed, we recall with fire and light. Our victories and our survival, we celebrate with fire and light. By the flickering of flames that refuse to die, we remember and we endure. Thank you.
That's a great poem, and I think hearing it read by you makes it all the stronger in my mind.
Thank you.
Really lovely, really lovely. All right, next is, I guess, myself. I'll be darned. Here we go. Give me just a moment. I'm going to pull up my poem here, which I have queued up. Anyway, just to introduce myself again, my name is Wendy Van Camp. I have been a speculative poet for at least 10 years, maybe longer. I started out with taking a class on how to write sci-haiku, and before that point, I hadn't really written any poetry for 20 years, maybe a little bit in high school on assignment, but that was it. And I just absolutely fell in love with the form. And over the next few years, I just would focus on it, and I would just slowly keep writing haiku poems, in addition to my being a novelist. And eventually, I started illustrating the poems. I started selling the poems as art prints at Comic-Cons, and now, lo and behold, here I am, a poet laureate. How did that happen, right? But here I am. The poem I submitted for the anthology, and I always put one in. I I know I allow multiple poems for a lot of the poets that come in, but I like to limit myself to one because I'm the editor, and I just want to kind of take a step back in my role. But this is the one I submitted for this year. It's called Purchased on eBay. It's a series of sci-fi poems in a sequence. And it was inspired by a scientific journal about a purple stone that was found in Africa. It's a single source stone. And it's one that they now use for quantum computers in their hardware system. It solved a certain problem, and it may be the reason we will have sentient machines coming all too soon. So this is it, purchased on eBay. For sale on eBay, lost in the listings, a gem, limited supply. Found in Nambia, key to quantum computers, a single source stone. Sandwiched between mirrors, light hybrid matter particles, cuprid oxide stone. From polaritrons, circuits to simulators, switch matter to light. One in an auction, never mind science suppliers, grants will pay for all. Science holy grail to make sentient AI. But who profits first? And thank you. And our next reader, if I can pull up my list here, is going to be Joshua St. Clair. So go ahead and mic yourself, and let's hear your selection.
All right, very good. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Wendy, thanks for choosing my poem. John Paul, thanks for hosting tonight. This is going to be fun. Thanks, my fellow poets, too. You've picked some of my favorites from the anthology to read, so that was a real pleasure. I'm going to be reading Schrodinger's Cat. Schrodinger's Cat it's a story bond. It's a hybrid form, and it's also an experimental poem. So it's a hybrid form, in fact, in the sense that it's like a haibun. So a haibun is prose followed by a haiku. This is a story bond. It's a flash fiction followed by a haiku. But it's experimental in the sense that it has two endings. So I'll read one and then the other. Schrodinger's Cat. It was the end. She had stopped eating and drinking days ago. Her side rose and fell in uneven gasps. When her consciousness returned, which happened less and less, her amber eyes would open and search for me. Her interaction with the universe was reduced to the mere press of her head on my hand. The cyber doula put his hand on my shoulder and said it was time. He reminded me again, gently, that the mind upload only had a 50% chance of success and that I needed to say goodbye. I kissed her head as she lay there, neither alive nor dead. He let me follow as he wheeled her into the operating theater. They placed her, like an offering, on a sterile steel table below the white sphere of the medbot. Before I was rushed out of the room, the medbot began to thrum. She looked up at me, her eyes wide in terror, as the medbot popped open and became a Medusa's head of tubes and wires, which one by one snaked their way through fur to flesh to find her secret self, hidden behind the curves of her skull. Ending 1. Hours later, the cyber doula woke me in the waiting room and asked me to follow him. He led me down an immaculate white hallway and opened a door. He motioned me in, and there on the table, familiar gray fur surrounded the amber eyes that looked up at me. I ran to her side. She pressed her head up to meet my fingers. Deep inside, I could feel the gears revving as she began to purr. The quick movements and the playfulness of her new robotic body sent shockwaves through me. It was just like she was a kitten again, but she was really just her old self again, free of the agony of a dying body. She rubbed her muzzle against me, gleefully nipped my fingers, and covered me in kisses. In the quantum circuits, under the aluminum skull, under the silicone skin, under the gray fur, she was still the same girl she always was. Helium flash, the unexpected scent of November lilacs. Ending 2. Hours later, the cyber doula woke me in the waiting room and asked me to follow him. He led me down an immaculate white hallway and opened a door. He motioned me in. There on the table, familiar gray fur lay still and twisted. I reached out to caress her, but stopped. Her body, fully spent by the failed work of the medbot, was no longer her. She was somewhere else entirely. I closed my eyes. She wasn't bound to me anymore. She wasn't bound to Earth anymore. I could see her batting around planets, pawing ropes of plasma, peering down event horizons. What she used to inhabit simply lay there. She belonged to the universe now, or perhaps beyond it. A point of light fading to infinity, supernova remnant. So, and that is dedicated to my late cat Venus. And unfortunately, we don't have the technology yet. So thanks for letting me share.
It was lovely. Yeah, I think that was my favorite one of the ones you submitted. I remember because of the formatting, you and I had to go back and forth to get it right. And I'm really glad we did, because it's an excellent poem and it needed to be in the anthology. Our next reader is our own Jean Paul Garnier.
Hello again. Thank you so much, Wendy. I'm Jean Paul Garnier. I am the owner of Space Cowboy Science Fiction Bookstore in Joshua Tree, California. I'm also the producer of Simultaneous Times Science Fiction Podcast, and most of you here tonight probably know me as the editor of the SFPA's Starline Journal. Mine are really short in this year's anthology, so I guess if you indulge me, I'll read them all. A few of them are sci-fi coup. This is The Massless Quanta. The massless quanta bends to the gravity well, lensing perfection. Once I found your speed. Once I found your speed, tunneling toward death, ego smeared in the spiral, laughter in the shape of tears. At this speed, time stills, reference irrelevant. I dies, replaced. Something grander, encompassing. We cannot measure the stillness which moves from our position, both at once, outside our frameworks. Will I know your speed again? More than ego will die. Whence I return, may we join. And this is When All Nears Dark. There's a theme of light going on here, you probably picked up. When all nears dark, stream becomes stutter, strobing cosmos, laughing into oblivion. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jean Paul. You know, every time I hear you read, I just grow more and more fond of your poetry. And I'm not saying because of who you are, just because I love your poetry. That concludes our reading for Eccentric Orbits 4. Again, I am your host and the editor of Eccentric Orbits. Eccentric Orbits is put out by Dimension Fold Publishing, and our publisher is Ken Godsword. He's based out of Canada, and you can find Eccentric Orbits on all major retailers, Amazon, Walmart, Target, pretty much anywhere you can find books, you'll find Eccentric Orbits 4. Yeah, that's, let's see, the website again is dimensionfold.com. And yeah, I think that pretty much concludes it. Thank you all for coming, and I guess we'll turn this back over to Jean Paul.
Thank you so much, Wendy, for putting all this together and for putting this fabulous anthology of speculative poetry together. Eccentric Orbits Volume 4. You can also find it at Space Cowboy Books or at dimensionfold.com, which we will have in the links below the YouTube video. Thank you so much to all of our wonderful poets tonight. Wonderful to meet you virtually. And thank you to our audience. We'll see you all next time.